Hello, I'm Julie Beamer, and this is my case study video presentation. The background for this project is the case study of the transferred employee. In this scenario, an employee had been transferred to my department 2 months ago. When the employee approaches me asking for their annual review, I'm surprised because their former supervisor should have completed it before they came to me. When I reach out to the former supervisor, she refuses to complete the appraisal herself. She states that she was not told that she was required to do this, and completing it now will raise red flags and draw attention to the fact that she failed to complete the task. When I approach my supervisor, he tells me to change the dates on the documents, making it seem as if they transferred into my department yesterday. He states that this happens all the time. I become uncomfortable with the idea and I call the organization's legal counsel, who tells me it's not illegal to change the documentation if it is to correct an administrative error. I discuss with them that this doesn't look like an error, more like someone trying to cover up a mistake. It is suggested I go talk with my supervisor if I am uncomfortable. Now I am left in the position of questioning the judgment of my supervisor, who plays a role in my success in the organization and doesn't like to be challenged. What would I do in this situation? Face-to-face conversation with my direct supervisor. This rich communication is best for difficult conversations, as I can be conscientious of my body language and present as non-confrontational. Making it clear my level of discomfort regarding this matter, I'd explain that it appears to me that this is more an attempt by someone to cover themselves for an error. My blatant disregard for the rules of the Human Resources Department could carry more punishment than correction of the error by the previous supervisor. While I recognize that my supervisor will be uncomfortable with the idea of me discussing my apprehension about this request or demand, as it were, I feel strongly that this goes against my values. I have not been manager to this employee for the previous year and am unable to provide an accurate assessment of his or her work. Additionally, I am uncomfortable changing any official document. I would reach out to my Human Resources Department generalist to discuss this matter. They will likely have documentation regarding the process of transferring an employee and that it was provided to the previous supervisor. This seems like a minor infraction for the previous supervisor, but altering documentation could be a major infraction for me. Explanation and justification for my decision. Ultimately, two wrongs do not make a right. Fixing someone else's error, fixing my own error for that matter, will not make this original error no longer exist. It simply means two people are in the wrong instead of just one. This isn't an either-or situation, however. The former supervisor doesn't have to be wrong per se for me to choose inaction regarding changing the documents. This truly may have been an error on the former supervisor's part and can be corrected by them doing the evaluation. The bigger question is, what is the culture in the organization? Is it a blame culture, a culture wherein mistakes are not allowed? Or is it a culture that views errors as teaching moments, one that promotes growth and development? What is it that makes the supervisor so unwilling to correct a mistake? The ethics and values behind my decision. Consequence is one of the reasons I'd opt not to change the documents. I've learned in my life that honesty is always the best policy. It's one of my deeply held values. If I were to change the documentation, somehow the issue would find its way back to me. In this instance, I'm subscribing to the principle of duties. That is, doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. As an employee, I am bound by the organization's policies and procedures. Not only that, I am also bound by the Code of Ethics of the American College of Healthcare Executives. One of the elements of the ACHE Code of Ethics is not participating in activities that demean the credibility of the healthcare leadership profession. I have a hard time reconciling changing documentation and the American College of Healthcare Executives Code of Ethics. Changing the documentation feels dishonest to me. Another element of the Code of Ethics is to be truthful in all forms of professional and organizational communication, and not to spread information that is false, misleading, or deceptive. I believe this speaks for itself, as changing the documentation would certainly be dishonest. Third, the American College of Healthcare Executives Code of Ethics states we should strive to create an organizational environment in which mistakes are minimized and disclosed and addressed effectively. This speaks to my earlier point about the culture and turning mistakes into growth opportunities. Healthcare executives should create an environment that encourages free expression of ethical concerns. I'm not sure if my boss in this scenario subscribes to this, but he should. If my supervisor continues to demand that I change the documentation, I would feel I'd have no choice but to go to the next member of leadership in the chain of command. While I realize that this will likely upset my direct supervisor, and he or she may view my refusal to change the transfer paperwork as insubordination, I feel strongly that this is deceitful, and I do not want to be responsible for dishonesty. Neither choice is easy for me. On one hand, I'd be dishonest. On the other, I may suffer retaliation at the hands of my supervisor, or at the very least, lose his trust for making what I feel is the ethical decision. I'm choosing to do what I feel is the right thing to do, and that's not changing the documentation. The ethical principle behind my decision. Deontological ethics best describes the principle I'm applying to this situation. Also called duty-based ethics, this principle is heavy with commitment and accountability. That is, doing what I'm supposed to do is the most virtuous and ethical choice. My commitment is to my organization and my profession. Because of all of the previously stated reasons and my ardent support of doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, I choose not to change the documentation. Thank you.